So last week, off of 3 days with the team, Josh Dobbs had to come in and lead the Minnesota Vikings to a victory over the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. He was 20 of 30, 158 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Also ran for 66 yards and a touchdown. Had a couple of turnovers, but we'll credit that to him just not getting used to the offense. And obviously, this week there's been a lot of talk about, can Josh Dobbs be the starting quarterback for this team for the rest of the season, one, and maybe even going into the future. Who knows? I mean, to a certain extent, he is kind of that journeyman quarterback. You're just hoping you can get the best out of him at this year to get you through the season and then see what you do next year. Or maybe he ends up not being the guy and Jared Hall ends up coming back in after he clears concussion protocol. But at the end of the day, he is the starter for this game this Sunday against the New Orleans Saints. And this is honestly, I mean, I know we kind of talked about it last week with Jared Hall, but this is honestly a huge opportunity for Josh Dobbs. He gets to start this game. Minnesota Vikings are on a 4-game win streak. Justin Jefferson sounds like he's itching to get back, not this week, but hopefully in the next couple weeks here. But you're back at home at US Bank Stadium. You have a chance to get on a 5-game win streak. And Josh Dobbs has a real opportunity to cement himself as the starter for this team the rest of the year. It's not going to be super easy playing a Saints team that is 5-4. I believe they are leading their division right now. Are they great? No, but they have a lot of really good pieces on this team, and we'll obviously talk about them a little bit later on. But how are you feeling with this game? Josh Dobbs, it's a big opportunity, right?
Yeah. Exactly what you said is big opportunity, and I mean, you say for him, but I think like the thing with him is he has an interesting career because he got drafted by after a great season at Tennessee, drafted by the Steelers, and then he kind of bounced around. I think he had played like in a couple games within like the first 5 years of his career, because this is his 6th year, I believe, right? Like 4 or 5 years, he didn't really play much at all or whatever. And I think there was times where he just, I don't even think he was on a team at all. So, I mean, it's an interesting situation where it's like he never really got his shot until Tennessee called, and then he ends up going 2 for 2. Looks solid, but still kind of like what people would imagine is like this backup quarterback type of player. But then he goes to obviously, but the thing with that is then he does enough for Arizona to go grab him and make him the starter until Kyler comes back. So that says something about how Josh Dobbs did in that situation. And for the most part, I think Josh Dobbs did good for Arizona, all things considering. I mean, you're going into the team that was the favorite to be the worst in the NFL, and you have to do your best to keep them afloat. And I do think that, I mean, that team's downfall is definitely not on him this season. So, I mean, all of that. And then obviously, he did well enough for them to the point where Kirk Cousins goes down, and then the Vikings our organization could go grab a guy like Jameis Winston or, another one that might come in. And especially after having these really 2 big games. And if we really want to try to make that playoff push, and they did decide like, all right, maybe we do have something in Jaron Hall, but they also were like, instead of getting a proven veteran, we're going to go get Josh Dobbs, who came here for the Vikings. And then, like you said, has this, kind of up and down game, only 5 days, he was only on the team for 5 days, but roller coaster type game. But at the end, ultimately shown what his potential is. And it is very high. I mean, coming out of Tennessee, he had a 4.6, combine, which is obviously, and we've seen what his running ability looks like, and not just his running ability, but being able to escape the pressure and then use his legs. And he also has just a zip of an arm. I mean, his ball, I mean, I've said this before, but we talk about him being this rocket engineer type of guy, aerospace engineer, but he has a rocket arm as well. And I think that's the only thing with him is if he'll be able to, I think he has accuracy issues and turnover issues, and that's something that people worry about. But this is such an interesting story on him, because that's why I do think, like, it actually, to his credit, I guess, is, he was pushed into a Tennessee team that wasn't that great. It was on the brink of the playoffs. They ultimately didn't make it last year, but he only played 2 games with them, and then this Carolina team or Cardinals team that was terrible. So I do think right now our Vikings offense, especially if Christian Darrisaw plays, which he is still a limited participant in practice here, but he has a good offensive line. He has good weapons in TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison. We don't know if KJ is going to be in here, so that is a thing. And then obviously Justin Jefferson isn't going to play this week, more than likely, but he still has a couple weapons in there. So I do think this is just a real opportunity for him to to be to show who he might be, and maybe that could be a future of quarterback. Is he going to be a guy that is like the Kurt Warner, or is he going to be a guy that is just what a lot of teams are looking at him right now as a high end wide quarterback number 2, which also does say a lot about him since he didn't play at all for like the first 4 or 5 years of his career, and now he's considered a high end wide quarterback too. So it is like, and he has all the abilities you want from a quarterback. So he really does get a shot here to be to like I mean, to me, I think this is a pivotal moment in his entire career of what it could look like in the future. And I do think, it's his opportunity. And if it doesn't work out, like you said earlier, it wouldn't be surprising for us to go back to Jaren Hall as soon as the following week. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him in this game, and we're going to see who he is. And I mean, he could just be average. He doesn't have to be like the future of our team. But I do think even if he's just kind of average or whatever, you might be interested in still bringing Jaren Hall in. So yeah, I think there's probably going to be a lot of pressure on him, but it is what it is. It's the NFL, and if you want a starter in this league, that kind of stuff is going to happen.
Right. And like a lot of people are looking at the Saints team thinking, hey, this is a very winnable game for the Vikings. But you got to remember, like, for a guy who's coming in, still learning this offense, still learning people's team or names on the team, this isn't an easy test because this Saints defense is pretty solid. I mean, over total defense, they rank 7th with allowing 300 yards per game, only allowing 17 touchdowns. They are 7th against the pass as well, allowing only 192 yards per game. So that's going to be a tough test. The rush defense, they're not great. They rank in the 20s, or 17. But of course, as for the Vikings, we don't necessarily need to worry about that. And they can get after they can as well, kind of get after the quarterback, and they are pretty good at forcing some turnovers. I mean, they lead the league with 12 interceptions as a team. So this is going to be a relatively tough test for Josh Dobbs, right? But I feel like we do have obviously the weaponry to go after them. I mean, he was successful last week without knowing the offense. TJ Hawkinson, I think anytime you have a young quarterback or a quarterback, maybe who is coming in off short rest or short time knowing the offense, the tight end's your best friend because they are usually running those shorter routes. And he relied on TJ Hawkinson a lot last week. 7 catches, 69 yards worth. Jordan Addison's still here. I mean, obviously, like you said, no KJ is going to be huge, but Brandon Powell stepped up. We're going to need that to keep happening.
Right.
And this defense has some names. Carl Granderson. We got Cam Jordan. Of course, you got Marshawn Lattimore, Tyrann Mathieu, Paulson Adebo's playing well back there as well. So this defense has some names on it, and I'm kind of looking forward to. I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know enough about that defense. I don't know if Lattimore shadows or if he plays sides, but I'm kind of looking forward to, we all think Jordan Addison is going to become this really good receiver for this team. This is a really good test going up against the likes of Marshawn Lattimore, one of the top corners in the league for a while now. So
right.
I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And Josh Dobbs, if he wants to keep this job, he's going to have to rely on those guys a lot. And like I said, it's going to be a fun test for him. I mean, it might be frustrating to watch because that Saints defense, like I said, they can get after it. But I think this is going to be a really good test. And if he comes out and plays well and he relies on his guys and his guys make moves or make plays for him against that defense, I don't know, man, this could be the start of something special for Josh Dobbs and this 2023 Minnesota Vikings team. But it's going to be
and it'd make one hell of a story if he ends up being a good turns the corner to be a good quarterback this year late in his career, and like everything that's going on. I mean, all the Creed stuff with Kirk Cousins and him going down, us turning around the season, him coming in, and then the way he did it, the way the team backed him afterwards, and then even like I think you see the little slime video that they had with the Nickelodeon Slime
MVP.
Award or whatever, MVP or whatever. So all that stuff. So I mean, it just feels like there's a lot of momentum going into this story of who Josh Dobbs is. So obviously, right. I mean, fans, even me, like I like Jaren Hall. I was more on the idea of like going more towards the Jaren Hall direction. This is more specifically because the odds are against a guy who's been in the league for 6 years and has been on like 5 different teams. But man, it would be a hell of a story. So that would be interesting. But like you said, it would be a huge test, and it's going to be one for him because it does kind of feel like it's going to be up to him. It feels like it's going to be him that makes or breaks winning this game or not, because they do have a good defense, especially in coverage. And I think they have like an 88 PFF grade in coverage. So I mean, they are going to have to worry about that. I do feel like you were talking about Addison and Lattimore. Luckily, Addison's just eating up every cornerback good cornerback that's tried to play against them. But still, you don't have KJ Osborne. You have to rely on Brandon Powell. And I don't know if we do see Jalen Naylor maybe come up. And I know we saw some Harry last week, so that would be interesting. But you still do have a safety blanket in TJ Hawkinson. And I think TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison, especially what we know Jordan Addison is now, is still, I mean, that's pretty damn solid. It is crazy to think of the idea that this is without JJ and what that could look like when JJ comes back. But yeah, I do think that's a big part. And I do think a lot's going to be ride on Dobbs' shoulders, but you know, it is going to be up to our defense too. I'm more worried about their defense, I guess, is what I'm mostly saying. But I
mean, Kevin O'Connell is going to have to call a really good game too. Like which he has done the last few weeks. That's going to be paramount as well to make sure Dobbs is in the best situation possible.
I think this is a game. If we win, it's going to be our offense versus last week. It was like our defense versus their offense. This week, I think it's our offense versus their good defense, because I think our defense can hold. I don't think the Saints have some really solid pieces on offense, and Alvin Kamara, something we'll absolutely have to worry about. And obviously, Michael Thomas is a reliable wide receiver, even though he hasn't really went back to being who he used to be. But Chris Olave is super stud second-year wide receiver. And then we have to talk about whatever Taysom Hill is, and always every single season he just has these little parts of the seasons where he just like gets, like last week he ran the ball 11 times for 50 yards. So we have to think about that as well. But at the same time, I mean, again, we've talked about this before. We faced a lot harder offenses than this year, and we've been able to step up for the most part in a Flores defense. So I do think, I think our defense is going to be able to hold them. I do think it's going to be a little bit more of a difficult challenge than the Falcons were for sure, but not that crazy difference. I do think, again, it's going to be our not rookie quarterback, our quarterback in Josh Dobbs this week versus their defense. So it'll be interesting to see how that, it's Josh Dobbs is going to have to really step up. So again, as Viking fans, it's going to be an opportunity for us to be like, all right, is Dobbs really, is he him? Is he the guy? Is he going to show the same heroics that he did at the end of the game last week in this game, to the point where Viking fans are excited of the idea of him starting forward? Because if not, the chances of him being that guy are a lot slimmer than Jaren Hall being that guy. So I do feel like you should see what you have in Jaren Hall, since he's a rookie, and this other guy and Josh Dobbs is 6-year vet. But
yeah, speaking of their offense, you mentioned Taysom Hill. I believe that I saw something that he's like the first player in history or something along those lines to have a passing, rushing, and receiving touchdown. I mean, that's probably not 100% true. I saw some sort of stat, but it is crazy. He does have 3 rushing touchdowns this year on 255 yards. Then he also has a receiving touchdown, 142 yards receiving. I mean, obviously, you mentioned the other big names. Watch out for Alvin Kamara, who's ever since he's came back, he's been a PPR. Fantasy-wise, been a PPR machine. A lot of pass catches out of the backfield. I mean, I hate to talk about it, but he is the guy that put up 6 touchdowns on us on a Christmas game that ruined my Christmas, whatever. But then you also, like Chris Olave as well, we also do got to watch out for Rashid Shaheed, who he's not going to have a lot of big plays, but he does have 26 catches for 500 yards this year, second in receiving on that team. 3 touchdowns and yards per reception, 19, which is 8 more than Chris Olave has. So, I mean, there are some weaponry on this team, but at the end of the day, when you're looking at quarterbacks, Derek Carr doesn't necessarily scare you. I mean, I feel like his best days are behind him. Unfortunately, he's been in the league since 2014. I think he was drafted the same year Teddy was. So he's been around for a while. But I don't know, just like watching. I haven't watched a ton of the Saints offense, but I know I watched them against Jacksonville, and that offense just looked out of sync. It's you definitely get the feeling that defense is what's carrying them to where they're at right now. So this offense can hurt you if you give them extra chances. That's where this game really does come down to Josh Dobbs. He did have those turnovers last week, so he's going to have to limit those, because especially against a ball hawking defense like the Saints have, like that offense. Yes, we're not afraid of them, but there is enough talent there to where if you give them extra possessions, if you give them short fields, I am worried more about that offense hurting us than I am about Atlanta's offense hurting us. We can't give the Saints those situations. I think they will find ways to take advantage of them with the firepower that team has. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is again, this is a solid test, but one that I still do think the Vikings will find a way to solve, and I think they will find a way to win this game. Which brings us into score predictions. Unless you had anything else to add at the end of this, you got anything else?
Just yeah. I mean, I just want to say, just like you said, I mean, they have the number one most interceptions in this year out of any team with 12, like you were mentioning. And like you were already saying too, Dobbs did have three. Well, he had a safety, two fumbles, and then put the ball on the ground another time in a pregame snap. He also has, for the Falcons, I think he had five interceptions, but he had like at least a handful of fumbles there as well. So that's one thing about him too, is he is prone to turnovers. And with the Saints being the number one team right now in interceptions, that is also something that we have to worry about. And if we are going to win this game, and we could have, this is a broken record since the beginning of the year, but we cannot have turnovers. We win this game if we do not turn the ball over. If Dobbs does not turn the ball over, I think we win this game.
Yeah.
But that brings me to score predictions then, and we did it on our show too, but I'll do a Dobbs one as well, and I'm going to be very optimistic here. I'm going to give him 200 yards throwing, 2 touchdowns thrown. I'm going to give him 0 interceptions, but I'm going to give him a forced fumble. And I'm going to give him a forced fumble. I'm going to say 40 yards on the ground with a running touchdown as well. Predictions, score predictions, and I say the Vikings win 24-17 by more than a touchdown.
Okay. I'm going to stick with your score prediction. I like yours. Mine was 27-17. I do feel like it is going to be a little bit closer than that just because of how good this defense is. But at the end of the day, I do still think the Vikings pull it out. Passing yards, I'm gonna go a little under yours. I'm gonna say like 190. After I kind of saw what the Saints allow on average, I do think that's a very solid number, and it is gonna be hard to go against that defense. So I will say probably around the 190 mark. Couple passing touchdowns. I think 1 turnover, maybe 2 in some way. I do think he'll have I kind of agree with your 40 some yards on the ground. I think that's a pretty good number. But yeah, at the end of the day, I do think the Vikings find a way to pull this one out. I think they find a way to get the W. Get on a nice little 5-game win streak, and we're looking at a 6-4 operation, and everything's out in front of you. You got 2 night games after that, and from there, I guess we'll just kind of see what happens. We want to know what you guys think about this game. Let us know your score predictions down in the comment section. Like the video if you haven't already. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys next time right here on the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikes.